Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear Puvita and B family, I, Jamilah, would like to present our fruitful material today under the theme General Linguistics versus Applied Linguistics. Take your time. Well, relating to general linguistics, Merriam-Webster dictionaries states a definition of general linguistics is a study of the phenomena, historical changes, and functions of language without restriction to a particular language or to a particular aspect, such as phonetics, grammar, stylistics of language. Well, dealing with general linguistics, there will be three main scopes to discuss today. The first topic is what the scope of linguistics are, and in this part we'll discuss on what the linguistics is, and then the second, the nature of language. We'll discuss about what the language is, and then the last, historical background. We'll see what the schools of linguistics are. Okay, we come to the first scope. What is linguistics then? This is the systemic and scientific study of language. There will be 8 points to be discussed as the aspects of language in this section. The first is what language is. The second is what languages have in common. The third is social differences in language uses. And the fourth is how languages change over the time. The fifth, how languages work. How languages then vary. How children acquire language as second language acquisition. And how language reflects the mind. Well, we'll discuss number 1. What language is? Check this out. Language can be defined as a system of conventional spoken, even this is manual or signed, or written symbols by means of which human beings, such as members of a social group and participants in its culture, express themselves. And the function of language includes communication. This is the way how people communicate each other, how they convey the idea, how they convey the information by using language. The expression of identity, of course, play imaginative expression, and emotional release. As Henry Sweet, an English phonetician and language scholar, stated, that language is the expression of ideas by means of speech sounds combined into words, and words are combined into sentences. This combination answering to that of ideas into thoughts. Okay, the next section discusses on what languages have in common. Okay, something that all languages have in common is that they allow us to all communicate with each other and all have grammar, even though not all languages have the same grammatical order, but all languages have grammar. Languages have sentences with the basic building blocks, part of speech like nouns and verbs, and the systems for constructing sentences out of these building blocks are very similar across languages. Okay, language use and social difference. Social differences in language are those features of an individual's speech behavior that are shared by significant numbers of others and play a role in the signaling of common identity. I'm awfully sorry, my baby is crying because he is unwell today. Okay, let me go on. The usual method of demonstrating this sharedness has been to focus on groups such as residents, class or ethnic background, and to isolate phonological, syntactic, or semantic indices that show a systemic relationship to the macro-sociological variables that partition such groups. Okay, language changes over the time. Language isn't fixed, it is always evolving. The English language has changed dramatically over the last millennium, and there are many different ways that this evolution happens. Here are some of the primary ways. The first is comes from the trade and migration of the people surrounding the countries, and then the second is technology and the new inventions. The last is the old words acquiring new meanings. Okay, the fifth point we'll discuss on this section is how languages work then. It is a simple question but really meaningful and one that most people never think to ask. Language is so automatic, almost like breathing, that most people don't realize the complexity that underlies it and the subtle and effortless skill with which they wear it. Language is pervasive and essential part both of your own life and of who we are as humankind. Okay, the sixth section is how languages vary, how children acquire language, and how language reflects the mind. This part will be discussed deeper on the next presentation with different presenters, so don't miss it. Okay, we go to the second scope of general linguistics, that is what languages is. There will be 6 points to define the language. The first is language is a system. A language is said to be arbitrary. A language is social. A language is spoken, as I'm speaking to you now. And a language is productive or creative. And then the last is complete for its native speakers. That is language. Okay, now we go to the last scopes of general linguistics, that is the course of linguistics. This is the scientific study of languages. There are of course numerous schools of thought related to it, and here are four of the most well-known linguistic schools of thought. The first is functionalism. The second is structuralism, and you will be familiar to Ferdinand de Saussure from Switzerland. And the third school of linguistics is generativism, and you will be familiar to Noam Chomsky in this section. And then the last is cognitivism. Okay. After discussing about general linguistics, we go down to discuss a bit information about applied linguistics. We start from the definition. Applied linguistics is a field of study that looks at how linguistics can help understand real-life problems in areas such as psychology, sociology, and education. Applied linguistics, or AL, is defined as many things for many people, such as Cook stated in 2006. And on the other term, applied linguistics deals with the real-life problems, and this relates to a broad area of language concern. Okay, just the point that we'll discuss on the next slide is the scopes of applied linguistics. There are language education or language learning, language work and law, language information and effect, language and society, and then the last, language and teaching. Okay. Well, dear B family, what can you see on your screen? Exactly. This is a tree. To make it easier in comprehending what the linguistics is, just imagine a tree. A tree has the stem and of course branches. The stem is the core linguistics, consisting of phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. They are the main branch, the core linguistics. And at the branches of the core linguistics are sociolinguistics, psycholinguistics, applied linguistics, anthropological linguistics, statistics, computational linguistics, and then the last is neurolinguistics. Okay, that's all about general linguistics and applied linguistics. Allahumma sholli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Thank you so much for comprehending my presentation. Hopefully, you may add more information on our column section. See you and have a nice discussion. Kami UNISMA, kami bangga. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.